Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping into a kingdom completely drowning in lies. I'm your host, but for this case, you can call me Jarl Alfredrin Irongrip, the spy master of Denmark. We're going to examine the social dynamics, the hidden motives, and the downright deadly betrayals of a royal court wrapped in a gritty, noir-inspired mystery. Grab your detective hats, because this is honestly one of the most tangled historical webs we have ever unraveled. Look, here is the situation. The old ruler, King Horager II, has been assassinated in a meticulously planned strike. Now, his 27-year-old son, the newly crowned King Thorolf, has demanded that we, acting as his royal intelligence network, build a comprehensive case file to uncover the truth. The court is completely full of blood, lies, and suspects. And I mean it, no one, not even the late king's closest family, is above suspicion. The nature of the crime scene actually tells us a lot about exactly who we're looking for. The king and his personal guards were literally burned alive at a farm. Now, this wasn't a crime of sudden passion in a dark alley, right? It was a highly complex plot requiring serious logistical coordination, a deep knowledge of the king's security arrangements, and, crucially, some absolutely ruthless collaborators. A single angry peasant just couldn't pull this off. We are looking for highly organized treason. Part 1. The Suspect Board. Okay, let's dive into this. To solve a conspiracy this vast, we really have to map out the major power players in Denmark. We've categorized our suspects by means, motive, and opportunity to figure out who had the ability to burn a king alive and, the desire to see him gone. But before we get to our prime targets, let's just clear out the noise. First up, Thor, the god of thunder. Yes, there are rumors he smote the king for hoarding his sacred warhammer, but we deal in earthly facts here. Second, Dag the Tutor. Sure, he was cuckolded by the king, but he's fundamentally nonviolent and completely lacks the financial resources. Third, Jarl Sigurd. While he's an honorable and incredibly powerful general who really dislikes Danish rule, if he wanted the king dead, he would have just challenged him to a very public duel. That brings us to the real threats. We're pinning our first prime suspect to the board, Goti Thorstein of Mare. He is a highly influential seer with a burning motive for Norwegian independence. And what do you know? Immediately following the king's murder, he's successfully orchestrated that exact independence and made himself regent of the newly formed breakaway kingdom of Norger. He absolutely had the motive, and he certainly reaped the rewards. Next, we move to the scorned wife, Queen Irmgard. She possesses immense political means and a very intimate understanding of the king's security arrangements at his holding in Sjælland. Her motive is as old as time, revenge. King Horik II was notoriously unfaithful, openly flaunting his mistresses and out-of-wedlock children. Irmgard had the power, the proximity, and the blinding rage required to just look the other way, or maybe even strike the match herself. Then we have to examine Chief Frode Krake. This man was the Field Marshal of Denmark. He knew the kingdom's military and security logistics inside and out. Suspiciously, Frode resigned immediately after the assassination. He then traveled to Norge to crown the 14-year-old Prince Magni as a rival Norwegian king, carving out huge swaths of power for himself in the process. Greed and ambition make a very, very compelling motive. Finally, we finish the board with Astrid, the law speaker of Denmark. She was the king's very public mistress and even shares a child with him. So why is she a suspect? Well, because her deep, unchecked access to the king makes her highly dangerous. Did she act as an inside woman for the conspirators? Was she just a pawn or the one actually moving the pieces? Her proximity alone puts her right in the spotlight. Part 2, a web of treachery. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the tone shifts from simple suspects to some breakthrough espionage. My Spy Master network didn't just look at public motives. We dug deep into the secret camps of our suspects. And what we found completely shatters the public narratives these powerful figures have been feeding to the realm. Just consider this stark contrast. Queen Irmgard claimed she was traveling safely to Saxony for the summer to visit her son. That was her public alibi. The secret reality? My spies discovered she actually traveled straight into the Norwegian military camps. For months, she was secretly sleeping with our prime suspect, Chief Frode, while he was supposedly leading men in a war. The former queen and the traitorous general literally in bed together while the kingdom burned. Let's see how this builds into an
absolutely illicit timeline. Not only was Frodi betting the scorned Queen Irmgard in secret, but spymaster Alfred discovered that Frodi was simultaneously carrying on a loud, passionate affair with Astrid the Law Speaker, the dead king's mistress. I mean, think about that. This man was betting the two greatest female rivals in the entire court, all while tearing the kingdom apart to build his own independent nation.
Part 3. The Interrogation. Armed with this explosive intelligence, the young King Thorolfluf decides it is finally time to act. We enter a tense, claustrophobic scene in the king's private meeting room. It's just the newly crowned king and his father's pregnant mistress, Astrid the Law Speaker. The king is young, inexperienced in matters of the heart, but burning with a desire to avenge his father's murder. So he skips the diplomacy entirely. He launches a blunt, aggressive opening directly at the pregnant Astrid. "So tell me, please, Law Speaker, whose child do you bear?" He immediately traps her, stripping away all the pleasantries and making it very clear that her secrets are no longer safe. He presses her hard, demanding to know if she has been sleeping with the enemies of the crown. Caught totally on her heels, Astrid offers a flimsy, desperate confession. She admits to the affair, saying, "Yes, I have made love with Frodi. It is just my bad habit." She literally tries to write off sleeping with a man suspected of burning the king alive as a mere bad habit. This dismissive attitude absolutely enrages the young king, who shouts that he should chop off her head himself for selling out the kingdom. But Astrid is a survivor, and she fights back with venom. She drops to the floor, pleading for understanding, but when the uncomfortable king recoils from her touch, she spots his weakness. She leans right into the noir drama, viciously mocking him. "You're still a virgin, aren't you? A big, strapping, handsome warrior who is still a virgin." This brilliantly illustrates the power dynamics at play here. She attacks his inexperience, his lack of understanding of passion, and his sheer inability to comprehend why she sought comfort in the arms of a charismatic general. But just when Astrid thinks she has the upper hand, the king brilliantly turns the tables. He drops his own bombshell. He coolly asks, "Did you know Irmgard is also betting Frodi?" He reveals to Astrid that the charismatic warrior she thought she loved is actually sharing his treasonous bed with her absolute greatest rival at court, the former queen. Astrid's reaction is explosive. Blinded by pure pride and jealousy, she shouts, "I was your father's true love. He loved me first and best. The scraps were left for her." So the crucial point is this. By reacting not with horror at the treason, but with petty jealousy over her rank among mistresses, Astrid proves to the king that her judgment is hopelessly compromised. The heat in her loins has completely blinded her to the very real threat against the throne. The fallout of this chilling interrogation is swift. The king strips Astrid of her powerful regent duties. He explicitly tells her she is no longer trusted to make decisions for the country. He only allows her to keep the title of law speaker out of pure legal necessity, because she's literally the only one who understands the complex new laws of the realm. And as for Frodi, well, the king vows swift, terrible wrath upon him. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Was Astrid simply an unwitting fool, seduced by a charming traitor during a time of grief? Or was this all carefully calculated? Was she actually a master conspirator who helped orchestrate the king's brutal murder from the inside? As we stare at the suspect board, the shadows only seem to grow deeper. I'm going to leave it up to you to decide who truly pulled the strings. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep your eyes peeled for the truth.